Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Strategic CFO, Driving Resilience and Value in a Volatile Market. My name is Nirja Patel, and I'm the Director of Competitive Intelligence at BlackLine, and I will be your host and moderator for today's event. Now, this webinar is part of BlackLine's Finance Innovation Week. Finance Innovation Week is a series of 10 webinars over 3 days, and you can see the schedule on the screen right here. Now, if you can watch these live, please do and take advantage of the free CPE available. Now, if you're not able to watch these sessions live, they will be available on demand. However, CPE is unfortunately not available on these on-demand sessions. Now, before we begin, just wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. Now, at the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets that you can use. Now, if you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your questions. We will also try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it'll be answered later via email. And of course, we do capture all of your questions, so they will be addressed. You can also expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of the slide area, or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. Now, if you have any technical difficulties, please click on the help widget, which covers common technical issues. Also, simply refreshing your browser can clear common issues such as slides not advancing or a loss of sound or any other kind of common issues you have. So, like I had mentioned before, this webinar is eligible for 1 CPE or CPD credit. Now, in order to earn the credit, you must attend the webinar for at least 50 minutes and complete 3 out of our 4 polling questions to earn CPE credit for this webcast. Now, for the poll, please click directly on the poll slide to submit your answer. Do not submit your polling response via the Q&A widget, otherwise it won't be tracked. You can track the progress of your CPE certification using the CPE certification widget, which is the CPE icon at the bottom of your console. Now, if you met all the requirements for CPE credit during the live webinar, your certificate will be automatically generated and available for download directly in the CPE certification widget at the bottom of your screen during or after the session. And then, of course, if you guys have any questions or concerns, feel free to email cpe@transformation.blackline.com. Awesome. Well, with that being said and all the housekeeping items out of the way, I will turn it over to my dear friends at RGP for their presentation. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Nirja. Appreciate it. Hi, I'm Steve McKechnie, and with me is Michael Allen. We'll introduce ourselves in a moment. First, we want to thank you for being with us today. And you don't have to be a CFO, current or former or future, to be a part of today's seminar. Really appreciate you being here. If you're a leader, future leader, we hope you find this session to be helpful and insightful. A copy of this presentation will be available following today's session. And very briefly, RGP is a global end-to-end consultancy, including finance and digital transformation practices. RGP has been a BlackLine partner since 2006. RGP is also a BlackLine customer, giving us additional perspectives to assist our clients. More about RGP, what we are, what we do is available in the appendix. And again, this presentation will be available after the seminar. With that, very briefly, I'm Steve McKechnie, Vice President, Finance Transformation and Global BlackLine Practice Leader. Michael Allen, who is with me and is going to introduce himself. He's also Vice President for Financial Consulting and Operations. Michael, what do you have to add, please?
Yes, thank you, Steve. The areas that our practice areas focus on across the RGP Consulting unit are Office of the CFO, digital transformation, and M&A integration and divestiture.
And Michael, if I remember correctly, you're a former and, dare I say, recovering CFO. And look forward to you sharing your thoughts and insights today. Really appreciate you making time.
Of course.
With that, we have our first polling question.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. So our first polling question, because we want to make sure you get that CPE credit. As an accounting and finance leader, what do you feel are the most important aspects of your role? A, people management. B, data and information management. C, audit and compliance management. D, financial planning. Or E, all of the above. I'll give you guys a few minutes to kind of answer the question, kind of think through, what are the most important aspects of your role?
And Nirja, I like the question because there's no wrong answers.
That's true. There is no wrong answer.
Yeah.
And I think it can really vary based on, your company and the organization you're in as well.
Agreed. Your role, where the company is. I mean, part of this CFO's responsibility is the financial health of the organization. So these are all aspects of that. So very curious what folks are going to respond with.
Absolutely. So just again, as an accounting and finance leader, what do you feel are the most important aspects of your role? You have people management, data information management, audit compliance management, financial planning, and all of the above. I'll give everyone about 10 more seconds to kind of answer the question to the best of their ability. All right. Love seeing all of kind of your thoughts and answers coming in. So thanks everyone for your responses. At this point, I'll pass it back to Steve and Michael. Take it away, guys.
All right. Thank you, Nirja. So, Michael, I'm going to ask a question and then let you take it away. So, during your time as a CFO, what have you seen to be the top 2 or 3 consistent challenges for the CFO or any leader in particular in accounting and finance, please?
Thank you for that question, Steve. A couple of the most important challenges that we've seen over, I'll say, the past, 5 to 8 to 10 years is just the evolving role of the CFO within the organization. If you think back, and I won't quote the number of years since it's been that I've been a CFO, the view from the CEO or the office of the CEO was really, we were simply there just to make sure that we closed the books, make sure we were the shepherds of the balance sheet, make sure the financial reports got out to the board on time and in good order. Really what we've seen over time, and if I can include some of the points here from the slide as well, is really post-pandemic, the office of the CEO's priorities have really changed, right? We've become really a true partner with the office of the CEO. And if you take a look in the upper right-hand corner, almost half of CEOs worldwide list global experience as the most important attribute that a CFO can have. Again, back when I was a CFO 10 plus years ago, no one really cared what my knowledge of the global environment was. They didn't care what I thought about pricing for our products. All they wanted to make sure is that we reported the revenue, the cost of goods sold, and operating expenses accurately month to month. And that was, that's really been the largest change. And again, where I believe the office of the CFO is heading in the future, again, is kind of that real strategic partner with the office of the CEO. Another really interesting change that's taken place, again, since my CFO days, is the percentage of functional areas that the CFO owns. Again, back to my personal experience, which I was a CFO of a healthcare provider organization. We really stuck around finance and accounting, the typical shared service or GBS functional areas of accounts payable, accounts receivable, and healthcare. It was Medicare billing, Medicaid billing, those types of things, and closing the books. But if you take a look down at the bottom chart here, and again, this was based on a survey by the KPMG Global CEO Survey, you can see the percentages of CFOs across those respondents. I believe the respondents were 1,500 CFOs that are surveyed. Obviously, finance and accounting is number one. But one of the things that was really surprising to me is risk management and internal audit are number 2 and number 3. And if you think back not too long ago, internal audit always reported into the CEO. As you continue down the path, corporate strategy, investor relations, regulatory compliance, again, all of those areas that you might expect, but really a shocker to me was around enterprise transformation. The CFO is taking front and center control over enterprise transformations, and then I'm just going kind of goes down M&A strategy, M&A post-merger, procure to pay, other areas. But again, this is just demonstrating how the office of the CFO is expanding. And if you think back to how things have been since the pandemic, and I know everyone says, hey, Michael, let's stop hearing about the pandemic. But really what the pandemic did is it started a shifting responsibility for the office of the CFO. What happened in the very beginning, supply chains were disrupted. That, of course, affects your P&L and your balance sheet. That continued for quite some time. We had a change in the White House, so the political environment has changed. Here recently, I think in maybe the past year, we've had the discussion around changing tariffs, right? All of those are major disruptions that began with the pandemic and even to this day are continuing, and how we respond to those as the office of the CFO is going to be very telling.
Great. So the top priorities for CFOs.
Yeah, so according to Gartner, this is their top priorities for CFOs in 2025, 5 areas. I'm sure everybody on this call is certainly familiar with at least 60 to 75% of these things, but let me run through them very quickly. First priority is data metrics and analytics. Obviously, the CFO needs to continue to deliver financial results and insights into the CEO and other functional areas. Without this data information, we're not going to be able to really enable our talent and other areas across the organization. So one of the things that will come up in this discussion is that cross-functional governance is key to the success of any data metrics or analytics program. Next area is efficient growth. When I think about efficient growth internally to RGP, we call it profitable growth, but it's the same exact definition using a different term. Obviously, profitable growth means you're driving top line revenue, right? But the key with efficient growth is that not only is it top line, but we're also controlling our operating expenses. Think about SG&A expense, payroll expense, business travel, marketing, all of those things, right? So that the bottom line improves at hopefully the same rate that our top line improves, and that we're able to scale this across the organization via new processes and technologies. Next priority, and I'm sure this is really a hot button for everybody that's on the call, is AI adoption in finance, right? And when Steve and I are out meeting with our clients every day, we hear from most people almost literally the first question: what's your point of view on how we use AI in the office of the CFO? And we'll discuss this a little bit more in detail in the next slides, but important to know as the priority is that over about half of finance functions have piloted some form of AI in 2024. Really the biggest issues that people are finding, because the technology is so new, and you hear a lot of news about it and how it can help you in, say, your personal life and not necessarily in your professional life, is what are the high impact use cases that are really going to be able to be prioritized for the office of the CFO. Again, we'll go into that a little bit deeper in the coming slides. But really, if you think about AI adoption, there's really 4 pillars of success, right? Skills, the technologies that are going to be used, the data that's going to feed the technologies, and then the staff that's going to utilize those technologies. Fourth priority for Office of the CFO is time allocation and leadership capacity. If you think back to the prior slide where we talked about the percentage of functional areas that the CFO is now owning, and the fact that priorities for the CEO, or that the CFO owns transformation, is that really CFOs are being stretched outside of what they're used to. If you even think again, not too long ago, 5, 6, 8 years ago, the role of the office of the CFO was really changed. So the suggestion here is that you really need that next line down. So strong lieutenants to ensure that the office of the CFO priorities are still being addressed. And then finally, but not last but least sort of thing, is retaining key finance and digital talent. The way that we work currently isn't going to change. I don't see a lot of AI necessarily changing the month-end close process or the quarterly or annual reporting process. It may make it quicker, it may make it more efficient, but there's still, at least currently, going to be that necessity for humans to review all of those outcomes. What we're really starting to see is that the finance and accounting organizations really lack the technical skills that are going to be the drivers of the tools for the next generation. So really what we're going to be talking about again further down in the deck is the necessity to have staff accountants, senior accountants that are really digital finance people, where they have that knowledge that's more data centric, digital savvy, and that they're real problem solvers. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but those are the 5 top priorities for CFOs in the world, according to Gartner.
Gartner and Michael Allen. But no, Michael, thank you for that, because there's a lot there, and I'm not going to say anything. Let's just get to the next slide, because you've teed up a lot of things that you're about to share.
Yeah, so if you go again, and really this is just a deeper dive into those top 5 that we just talked about. Really the top 2 challenges, as I'm sure everyone can imagine, is data metrics and analytics. And we talked about before in the summary slide that really the CFO needs to be the executive champion of our data governance model, right? And when you think about it, again, not just for finance and accounting functional areas, but for all the functional areas across the organization. The data says that 35% of CFOs think that data quality is an inhibitor to them adopting AI in the finance org, right? Again, data governance, just a typical governance structure that you may see even in, say, a portfolio management office. Those will all suffice. You can see in the lower right-hand corner the suggested governance model, CFO at the top, functional heads across the various functional areas, sales, marketing, operations, HR, and then a finance VP type level person that would be the steward to work on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month perspective with each of those functional heads to make sure that the governance model not only is being put in place and that the rules are set up correctly from the beginning, but that those rules are adopted by each of those functional areas and where we can show meaningful improvement to the data that's in our systems, right? If you think about what is really the importance around having accurate data, I mean, think about just your day-to-day life, right? When you're doing your monthly, quarterly, annual planning, you're doing budgeting, forecasting to the broader organization. If you don't have accurate data, then essentially don't even waste your time with trying to find a use case, because if the data is not there, then you're not going to be able to implement any type of AI solution. If there is lack of clear ownership and accountability around the governance, we just talked about the governance model that should be put in, then essentially don't even bother with AI or other endeavors, because unless you're working together as a true single team, you're just not going to get there. Duplication of efforts, data disruptions, integration issues, reporting issues, you'll never solve that. And the other real key importance is if you don't have accurate data, metrics, and analytics, you're just not going to be able to deliver those trusted insights that the office of the CEO and other functional areas are going to be looking to you to be able to provide to them. And I thought what the bottom one is that 33% of CFOs report that poor data quality inhibits AI adoption. I was a little surprised by that number. I would have thought with AI just opening up really broadly across many organizations that, and all the skepticism that surrounds what exactly is AI, how do I use it, what is my use case? I'm surprised that it's only 33%
Yeah.
plus of CFOs report that, but who knows? Number two,
Well,
go ahead.
Michael, I was going to say 33%. I thought that was low as well, but it says it's inhibiting their AI adoption. My guess is there's a lot of folks out there who haven't even begun the AI journey. And so data may or may not be what's holding them up. It actually may be something else, but getting to the data is going to be key. And sometimes ownership challenges, in addition to quality, we've seen where that's issue for various clients. And if the CFO has corporate responsibility, the emphasizing of the data belongs to the corporate entity, not individuals, can also be a challenge for the CFO.
Yeah, that's really a great point, Steve, because if you think about what's happened in a lot of industries over, say, the past 8 to 10 years, a lot of businesses have grown through acquisition, so integration and or divestiture activities, right? So forget about the whole data governance discussion, right? So many companies, and I know this, I've had formerly been part of a M&A integration consulting team. When we get down to it, we get all of the important things taken care of. We get HR integrated, we get ops integrated, and supply chain and all of those areas, so we can function and capture that revenue and that value that we stated to the board when we said we wanted to buy this company. And I'm sure many of you on this call have the same experience. I can probably count easily 30 to 40% of our clients when we get down to the end and we're looking for things that we can cut out of the integration schedule. Guess what that is? That's the data cleansing exercise for the vendor, customer, and item master. And arguably that those are three of the most important areas from a data quality discussion that you need to get right. What are you selling? Who are you selling to? How's it going to get there? All of those things are super important. So great point, Steve, that a lot of it may not just be the company getting in its own way. It may be that historically they've had some other activities and challenges that they haven't worked all the way through, and hence they're not even on the baseline to be able to have this discussion. All right. Top challenge number 2, efficient growth. We talked about this earlier and really what the definition of this is, but kind of delving down into the next level for the office of the CFO. And I thought this was really, really interesting that only 5% of organizations achieve the efficient growth status across phases of the business cycle. Again, we talked about what that is. It's about driving, I called it profitable growth, but in Gartner's words, efficient growth is when you drive both top line and bottom line improvements through your P&L. And, if you think about it and think about your monthly or your quarterly reporting to your board, really, at least in a lot of the clients that we serve, what people are looking for is that quarter over quarter sequential perspective, right? You can look at it year over year and go, hey, that's nifty that I saw 15% growth in this one business unit. But really the proof is in the pudding, and how have you done sequentially quarter over quarter. I thought it was also interesting that for those organizations, that 5% of those companies out there that do actually achieve the efficient growth, that they consistently see a 7.1% shareholder premium over their peers. Again, just proof that all of these things working together in the right way do drive value, and in the end, value to the organization and ultimately to your investors, may that be private owners and or stockholders.
Great. Ready for number 3? Or I'm sorry, the next slide.
Number 3. So number 3 talks about CFO's plan to invest in process automation and optimization. If you take a look over at the finance technology bullseye, really what you're seeing here is 4 areas that CFOs look at investing in. So the first one is critical technologies in the upper left-hand corner. In the upper right-hand corner is core finance technologies. Lower right-hand corner is process automation and optimization. And lower left-hand corner is advanced data analytics tools and technologies. And there was a survey done of 372 finance professionals. And you can really take a look at the results when you take a look at the dots. But essentially, to sum up what this is trying to tell you is that in the coming years, 2025 forward, CFOs are looking to invest their dollars in process automation and advanced data analytics tools. Again, not surprising. You know, the other thing that's you really see coming to fruition, and when you think about tools like BlackLine, and you're thinking AI, most CFOs are looking to their platform providers for their initial use of AI. Again, we'll talk a little bit more in the next couple of slides about building use cases for your functional areas. But the reality is most CFOs don't have experience with what AI is. They hear a lot of buzz about what it can do, but actually how it works, what the interfaces are with your systems, how setting artificial intelligence loose on your general ledger and other systems really worries a lot of CFOs. And so you're seeing, again, CFOs looking to their platform providers like BlackLine to see how AI really comes to fruition for their organization.
Totally agree, Michael. And I think part of it also, and it was on the previous slide, how critical, number one, data. How are you going to be able to do this without clean data, without having access to the data? You need all of this to be able to formulate your decision-making processes as well as ultimately your decisions. You don't want to make it based on only partial information, and you got to have data to be able to pull it all together. And AI is helpful, but we got to fuel that engine with data.
Correct. All right, so this is one of this slide and a couple of slides down post our next polling question are some of the most interesting things that I've seen in quite some time. And this is really talking about the numbers and AI adoption and what's come from the past and what we're looking towards in the future. So you can see AI adoption in finance, excuse me, 58% of finance functions piloted some form of tool in 2024 as compared to only 37% in 2023. You know, one of the key challenges, and I alluded to it in the earlier slides, is how do we identify high impact use cases? You know, you can think about all of those areas that sound super exciting of a use case that another company uses, but what are the biggest areas or that would have the largest impact across your organization from a use case perspective for process automation and AI? You know, the typical examples that we see are invoice matching, travel and expense optimization, customer credit, cash application. Again, all things that, you know, quite frankly, for everybody on this call, we've been talking about trying to automate those type of shared service center and or GBS centers, functional areas for years. And to a large extent, we've seen that automation already take place via RPA and other automation tools. Really, the difference that you're going to see coming into fruition with AI is that there's going to be that intelligence added in, you know, a component of the machine itself thinking, is this an issue? Is this something that really passes a three-way match, or is this something that we've got to throw over into a review account and we're going to have our corporate controller or someone else from his team, his or her team, you know, do a deep dive into what that is. So again, use cases, super important before you embark on any AI journey. When you take a look over to the right-hand side, you can see that these are the typical use cases that we're seeing across Office of the CFO organizations based on a 2024 survey. And you can see really left-hand side, intelligent process automation. Again, think about that as intelligence added to an RPA process. Next one is anomaly and error detection, right? That's great. And you'll see a lot of that capability built into your ERP systems. Think about it, the big players, SAP, Oracle, Workday, NetSuite, they're all now coming out with AI capabilities as a part of their overall systems. Another use case area obviously is analytics, and then operational assistance and augmentation round out those top use case areas. When you think about kind of what are some deal breakers when you're talking about AI feasibility in your finance and accounting functional areas, right? Assume you get past the use cases for your organization, the couple other deal breakers you need to think about, right? So one is skills. I mean, do you have the resourcing available within your functional areas that are going to be able to actually use these tools? Are they going to be able to translate a use case that likely someone else put together and input that into the tool and achieve the results that you're expecting? Next deal breaker is really enabling technologies, right? Who holds the license agreements in your organization? Is that IT? Is IT being kept up to date on the priorities of the office of the CFO, or is this something you're going to go down the path and maybe do a proof of concept or a pilot exercise just within the finance organization or in cooperation with your IT department? Again, all a potential deal breaker. Number three, obviously, is data availability, and I think we've touched on that enough. Obviously, data is the number one priority around AI adoption. And then number four is staff acceptance. And if you think about this, you think about when you talk to your finance organizations and people in there, they understand that, hey, AI is coming and hey, it can help me process an invoice quicker, or hey, it can help me create the payroll quicker or collect a payment. And while they're super excited about what they're hearing about AI in the environment, the other thing that you really have to think about is, are they also concerned? Are they concerned that, hey, if we start collecting more money, then maybe I don't have to have all of those people that call about late bills. Wow, look, it takes care of it on its own, or it reduces our days outstanding from, say, 40 days to 35 days, right? And that was really my specialty area. I think one of the key areas that you need to think about when you think about your staff, first and foremost, is that retention, right? Do you want to lose those people who outwardly are saying they're excited, but really inside they're concerned? The other real consideration of your staff acceptance is, do people feel like they don't have the skills or capabilities to be able to learn AI tools that the organization may be looking at implementing? There could be another contingency of, say, a later career worker that says, hey, I don't even really want to learn how to use an AI type tool in my job. And then, you think about earlier career people that are very excited to learn about AI, but what will their role be in the entire life cycle of using that tool? Again, I don't have any of the answers, but I think those are all really solid considerations for what people should be thinking about as you begin the AI journey, and think about all those other areas that we've talked about, right? AI, data, profitable growth, adoption, and we'll talk about a little bit more in the coming slides.
Great. And I believe we are due for another polling question.
Yeah, so we do have another poll. So just to read it out loud, as an accounting and finance leader, what do you see as the most challenging aspects of your role? A, people management, B, data and information management, C, audit and compliance management, D, financial planning, and E, all of the above. So I just wanted to make a clear distinction. The first question was what is most important, are the most important aspects of your role, right? But I think that can also differ, right? So we have the same kind of question and same answers, but really think about how this is, what do you see as the most challenging aspects of your role, right? And I think it can differ, right? To the last point, just because something is the most important doesn't mean that it's maybe the most challenging, right? So I think it'd be really interesting to kind of hear your guys' perspective and thoughts.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, this is, and again, not a trick question. There's no wrong answer, but Nirja's point, yeah, definitely, maybe what is most important may not be the same as what is most challenging.
Maybe all of these are challenging, and that's
That's true.
okay. And maybe that's just having a hard job.
Yeah. Well, I think Michael teed that up very nicely at the on that prior slide as toward the end of the discussion. What are the things that you need to address? It could be your biggest challenges.
Absolutely. So I'll give you guys maybe 30 more seconds to, put in your responses. Again, what do you guys see as the most challenging aspects of your role, right? You have people management, data information management, audit compliance management, financial planning, or, all of the above. All right. I think that's enough time to kind of give you guys. So we'll wrap up this poll. And, just in case you didn't get this one, we do have 2 more poll questions coming up. So, all right, I will pass it back to Steve and Michael.
Thank you, Nirja. And as Michael hinted earlier, we're going to talk some more about AI because everybody's asking, what about AI? What about AI? So, Michael, back to you, sir.
Yeah, so I alluded a little bit earlier in the presentation that super excited to talk about a lot of these AI adoption. And I was really surprised when I saw the chart over on the right-hand side. Again, considering the amount and level of discussions that we're having with our clients out in the marketplace, it seems like honestly, the top 3 questions are related to AI, but what I really thought was interesting here, again, twofold, is if you go back to 2022 let's ground you first on what these colors are telling you. So the dark navy blue at the bottom is generative AI software. The light, what I'll call royal blue at the top, is non-generative AI software. So think about like we talked about, the majority of CFOs in 2024 and 2025 are looking to adopt AI as a part of a third-party platform, right? So this non-generative AI software. And then obviously the red line shows what the growth is going to be, or the estimated growth is going to be over time. And again, considering the level of discussion that we seem to be having around AI with our clients over the past couple of years, I thought it was really interesting to see these percentage points, right? I mean, obviously, I'm not sure that 2022 is really a good year to go back to. I can't really think about a lot of discussions that we had, and Steve, maybe you have in some of the clients that you deal with. Really, for me, the discussions around AI really started to kick up in that late 23 and early 24 timeframe. But if you think about it and where we're at now, you can see that in 2024, 11% we're looking at generative AI, and 89% are non-generative AI. What's amazing to me is, with the level of buzz that we've seen, is that there was only a 4% increase in the generative AI. And from my perspective, while there was that 4% increase, we really stayed, again, from my perspective, relatively flat. 89 to 85% isn't that big of a change, right? It seems it's more like people discussing the topic more and more amongst themselves at various conferences or other areas where CFOs get together. And it would seem that will be holding through 2025. Where you really start to see things step up is obviously in 2026, up to a 22%. And obviously by 2027, 35% generative AI, and you can see the generative AI software growth. I think one of the biggest things that I think about, and I know, again, generative AI is really the buzz, but what is it really, right? We're going to stand up a center of excellence. We're going to work with one of our, our audit partners who may have a consulting arm, and they have a really big presence in generative AI. Remember that nothing changes when you think about generative versus non-generative. You're going to have the same considerations: data, processes, staff, right? All of those things will still be discussions. Again, I was just really interested to see this. I think what this really shows you, if you look back to kind of, from the 23 to 25 period, and you take a look at the AI adoption maturity, I think that really rings true, right? So early stage adopters, 75%, I'm willing to bet that actually will ring true for all of the people that are on this webinar today, right? I'm willing to bet that's probably a pretty good number. Somewhat advanced, if you've been a longtime user of RPA and you're starting to delve into some of those third-party tools like a BlackLine, and other platforms that are available, and you feel like you're starting to master the artificial intelligence that's in there, then that's 18%. And really 7%, again, isn't really a shocker to me. From my perspective, I would almost expect that AI achievers to be a little bit lower, considering where we're at in the adoption process and all the other considerations that we talked about earlier. Somewhat advanced, again, I think that would likely fit for a lot of the attendees on this call. Interested to know if anyone has any questions or comments around this slide. You can feel free to put those in the chat box. All right, so AI adoption in the office of the CFO. We've put in here, these are actually tools that we use within RGP, right? So obviously we're a company, albeit we're a consulting firm and not producing a widget, but we're on our own journey as well around AI adoption. And so, when you take a look at the left-hand side tools that we use, obviously we're a BlackLine partner, but we're also a BlackLine customer. We use Workiva, and we're currently doing some evaluations in our FP&A sections. Workday is our ERP, and we are using the AI capabilities that exist within that platform, excuse me. But we are looking to other areas that may be able to enable us to a greater extent in the FP&A area. When you take a look at the right-hand side, we have multiple automation initiatives with our company. We have longstanding internal teams that have been using UiPath, Alteryx, Blue Prism, automation bots for quite some time now. We have built, much like we had talked about before, when you think in the prior slide where you think about what are the use cases, right? It's all around kind of that shared service center, GBS idea of how can we get rid of some of these tactical type things that can really be handled by automation and or intelligent automation. And then recently we acquired a digital transformation consultancy, and they are a platinum ServiceNow partner and have done multiple ServiceNow implementations. And there are lots of capabilities that are embedded within the ServiceNow platform. I know a lot of you out on this call may think of ServiceNow as, hey, it's just my help desk. It's my IT ticketing system. ServiceNow is really a whole lot more than that. There are functional modules across almost every area that you would think about in an organization, all the way through finance and accounting, risk assurance, operations, marketing, sales, all of those areas. So there are very deep capabilities within ServiceNow, and they are one of those platforms that are really delving into generative AI.
It's great. And as a client of ours said, we eat our own dog food which I
That's
think
right.
was intended well, that not only do we advise clients, we take our own advice and do this as well.
All right, so this is a combination of a couple of thought processes when you take a look at the graphic that you see on the right-hand side of the slide. But you know, obviously, it says on the slide that Gartner recommends, and as do we as well, that you follow a very deliberate path when you're moving towards increasing your AI maturity, right? So obviously, the first is to start with a 5-phase approach to building out that AI maturity. That's what you can see over here on the right-hand side graphic across the top. And I always chuckle when I see this phase one, and phase one is to avoid AI. I think that's hilarious that we even have to have that as a phase one. Steve and I were having a discussion offline recently. We both thought that that might better be articulated as phase zero or current run rate. But hey, if you want to call phase one avoid, then okay, phase one is avoid. Phase two being experiment. And if you think about what this is, it's really talking about task automation, right? And if you think back to what we talked about earlier, this is really implementing, say, an RPA program, right? RPA is certainly part of one of the phases of AI maturity, and that's really what you get out of phase two experiment. Obviously, you realize time savings out of task automation. Phase three is where we really start to see the whole discussion around AI, true AI, come into the picture across the maturity phases. And that's where we start to talk about complex task automations, right? Not just I receive in an AP invoice, I enter it into the system, I do the three-way match, I send it for approval, someone approves it, and it gets paid. What are some of those more complex task automations that you think about? Think about your month-end close process, right? Think about where you start out in the steps and reconciliations, intercompany accounts that need to be reconciled, journal entries that need to be made. That's what we're really talking about when we're thinking about complex task automations. And those really lead to real cost savings, right? When phase two is time savings, right? So I save somebody's time, their time to process a AP check is 2 hours. But you know, their time to complete their reconciliations after their month-end close cycle is 2 weeks, right? And that's a real, not only time saving for the person and for your organization, but it's a realizable cost savings to the company when you think about what your average staff type person might cost you and how many of those people you have, right? So that's what really phase three is. When you move into phase four, this is where, and if you take a look down at the bottom across the risks, it's really an enhancement of what you've done in phase three, where you're, again, automating complex tasks. And what you're getting out of the tool is automated insights, right? Now the tools are starting to say to you, hey, this is great. We made your process quicker. And based on the process being quicker and the data that we're looking into, here's how you could make your process better. Here's how you could increase your revenue. Here's how you could sell more widgets. Here's how you could reduce your cost of goods sold. You know, here's how maybe you could reroute your trucks as a part of your fleet and reduce fuel costs for all of the trucks in your fleet. Again, where the tool itself is starting to say, based on the good data and the great use cases that you have come up with, here's how we can better your operations across the organization, and potentially achieve great cost savings and or increased revenue. And then obviously phase five is where we really get into things that are driving decisions that might have implications across the organization when you think about, hey, now I may be able to get rid of this entire functional area. right? I've got 25 people that are working in this area. I can replace those with two senior financial analysts that are going to take a look at the recommendations and the outcomes that we're seeing out of the data, and here's what we do with it next. So again, the five phases of AI maturity that you'll want to walk through. When you think about where, again, this is really back to the AI use case discussion, is when you think about setting up those use cases, where do you want to focus first? Well, obviously you want to focus on priority efforts, right? Where are things lagging behind? Where are we seeing the biggest drag on the end-to-end process or the most cost? Or we may have recently implemented a new ERP or added on a company with an additional ERP, and we're really seeing a slowdown in our financial reporting or in how we're receiving our inventory into our supply chain. Those are all areas that you should take a look at first. And when you step back and you think about maybe doing an ERP implementation, what did you do as an internal team? You took a look and you created a roadmap, right? So now I'm on ERP system A and I want to go to ERP system B, or I've done an acquisition and they have, say, a tier 2 level ERP. When and where do we want to integrate that new acquisition into our ERP? All of those points being said and made to say you built a roadmap. You're going to want to build that same roadmap when you think about where you are in the phases of AI maturity, and really put that plan in place and think about those risks. When I said the slide on the right-hand side was a combination of a couple of different thought processes, you can see the risks across the bottom row as it relates to all of the phases of AI maturity. And really there's two approaches that you see across the majority of organizations. We've really talked a lot about what the tactical approach is, and that's really, again, back to utilizing AI that's embedded inside of a third-party platform like a BlackLine. When you think about what is the next path, really that's strategic, right? But if you're thinking that your organization and you're part of this call and where do you fit, likely near term, you're in one of the first three phases of the AI maturity curve, and likely your most success is going to come out of looking at it from a tactical standpoint. Obviously, all the considerations that we talked about earlier around data, analytics, process improvement, optimization, automation, all of those things are most likely going to reap the most rewards when you're thinking about it from a tactical standpoint. Once you get through mastery of the first three phases, that's where you can really take a look at, okay, now we're going to go strategic. Now we're going to hire an internal team that's going to develop our own AI tools that's built on the success that we've had in the tactical phases. Again, really phases 4 and 5.
I think there's some good news here for some of the folks on the call, Michael, in that I bet a bunch of them are going like, yeah, we've already done phase 2. We've started on phase 3 already. I didn't even know we were doing AI. So I really like this, not just how it's laid out and the maturity curve and all of this, but I think it's encouraging for a lot of folks going, oh, we're already well on our way. So next time their upper management asks, what are you doing with AI? Well, let me show you this chart and here's where we are.
That's right. That's right. All right, so rounding out our top 5 priorities for the Office of the CFO in 2025. And, really, I think these two things really come together, right? And so one kind of relies on the other. So time allocation and leadership capacity, right? Obviously, we talked about in the first slide around the percentage of Office of the CFOs owning different functional areas than, say, we owned 5 to 8 to 10 years ago, right? So as your organization grows and your responsibility becomes more of an across the organization and not just within the financial reporting, P&L and balance sheet thought process, obviously you're going to have to look towards that next level down. And, in a lot of organizations, we see that we've done a very fine job of bringing in our top leadership or even our next level down leadership. But below that, say, vice president, corporate controller level, we've done very little or non-existent succession planning, right? So that's a key component that you need to start thinking about as your time allocation increases and your leadership capacity decreases, right? Is how are we going to impact the next couple of years? And people leave companies all the time. What if Steve McKechnie decides to leave our team tomorrow, right? Good for him. He's got a better opportunity, but it's still a consideration we have. And who's the next level line leader that's going to support us so we don't miss a step when we're talking about our AI maturity roadmap and plans that we have in place, right? So think about that. Don't put a single key person in a role that your roadmap is relying on, right? Think about that number 2 and maybe that number 3 and number 4 person, right? Throughout the organization. And where this really plays into the discussion, we're going to move to number 5, which is source and retain key finance and digital talent. I think we touched on it a little bit in the very beginning of the presentation, but 77% of CFOs report lack of technical skills in the finance org as a reason that their team hasn't adopted AI yet. Forget all the data discussions and the other discussions we had, but we'll go down the retain key finance talent discussion at this point. And think about it. The fact is that our staff accountants, our senior accountants, our financial analysts, our controllers likely have not been in a position, either within our organization or outside of our organization, to spend much time on learning new AI tools, right? So really what you're going to see over the next couple of years is we're going to be looking at a different type of talent, right? A digital talent. 63% will be digital talent, in addition to the core finance talent. And, ideally, what we're really looking for is, and the estimates are around 2027, is that we'll be hiring new people into Office of the CFO functional orgs that are really 50-50. They're a CPA who understands AI tools and how to use them and to drive the value to our organization.
Thank you, Michael. And yeah, we could keep going on. Maybe we do another session just about the resourcing and the personnel around AI and the future state of the accounting and finance org. So really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. We have a couple of polling questions coming up. We got more information in the back of this presentation, which will be made available later. Thank you all and appreciate you being here. Thank you, Michael.
All right. So we do have 2 more poll questions. So first is, as an accounting and finance leader, what aspects of your role do you plan to address first? A, people management, B, data and information management, C, audit and compliance management, D, financial planning, or E, all of the above. So again, similar format of the question, but again, what are you going to address first? What are your plans, right? And that might have changed over this discussion, right? Based off of, what Steve and Michael were talking about. And I think that's the whole point of the poll. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to answer this one. But I do also know that we're running up on time. So wanted to ask Michael a question here from the audience, just as, you guys are answering the poll. So one of the questions that has come up is, where should I start using AI? Steve and Michael, do you guys have any comments or thoughts around, this question from the audience?
I think we've made a couple of points around that. Where should you start using it again? What you should do is get together as a team and think about, where should I use it? Where's going to be the most impactful? What are you trying to get out of your organization? So I think that really you can think broad stroke in your area where you might use it. But I would really recommend that you get together as a team, maybe start up a governance process around how we're going to intake ideas about where AI would be useful within our team, and then think about maybe a prioritization framework or a process that would be put into place. I think this isn't something that you do as, say, a corporate controller or VP of finance on your own. You really need the input from your team, and you need to think about, as a group, what is the priority for my organization.
Awesome.
Agreed.
No, that's great. Steve, anything to add there?
I was going to say agreed. And for some folks who may be skittish with the term of AI or want some sort of formal universal definition of AI, maybe it's, what is your greatest pain point? You know, if we can make this pain point go away with automation or systems, what would that be? And that may be a way to get that group to be more comfortable and say, oh, well, in that case, it's whatever, and be able to start working from there. And again, collectively do it as a team.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for that answer. We're going to move on to the next poll. Again, feel free to answer this poll if you guys missed one of the poll questions, again, for CP credit as well. I actually think this is my favorite poll. Halloween is almost upon us, and we are officially in spooky season. So what candy do you plan to hand out? Bite-sized candy bars, candy corn, something nutritional, whatever comes in the biggest bag from Costco. I wish there was an option for those big candy bars, because I used to always want to get those, but not so much now. All right. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to kind of answer this question. Unfortunately, we don't have time to kind of go through all of the questions in the chat. But just so you guys know, we will follow up with some of those questions and answers after the webinar, as we are kind of taking note of all of them. So kind of watch out for more information. But hey, we spent more time on the actual content, so I think that's a win.
I appreciate everybody being here. And yes, get us the questions. We'll be happy to follow up.
Yep. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Now I'm hungry.
So we're going to wrap up this session now. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, part of our Finance Innovation Series. Again, remember that your CPE certificate will be automatically generated and available for download directly in the CPE certification widget. We encourage you all to complete our post-webinar survey, where you'll also have the opportunity to request a demo if you're interested. But as always, regardless, we do appreciate all of your feedback so that we can, make these the best as possible. So again, thank you to RGP, Steve and Michael. Great session. We really appreciate your time. And thank you all for attending, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.